All right, we're back. It is COMP3025 in the winter 2017 semester, and it's week 2, part 1 of our broadcast. I want to talk about assignment 1, which is, like I mentioned last week, the easiest assignment you'll ever get. And again, I kind of planned this out this way to make it a kind of a little bit of a litmus test for me, for you, just to kind of understand how good you are in terms of web technologies again, revision. Kind of review of a little bit of stuff, how to put things together. You to use jQuery Mobile or Ionic if you want to. If you really want to be adventurous, you can learn. You can start delving into that. Really, what I'm going to get you to build is a silly calculator app. Okay. I build this like I've kind of mentioned this before. This is due, by the way, week 4. So we're sitting at week 2. This is due week 4 on the Tuesday. So we get together on Wednesdays. This will be do the night before, right? So Tuesday, January 31st at midnight. So a couple weeks out. It's worth 15% of your final grade, but it's only like it's a calculator app, right? So you're gonna go, what the hell, 15%, and it's a calculator app? Yep. Is the hello world of mobile application development that I use. Okay, I build that calculator app in every major platform: Android, iOS, web, Windows Forms, whatever. I make that happen in every single time I do this. Why? Do the same app in different application frameworks, you start understanding the framework more, right? Especially if you've done it before. And a good example of that is when I build games. If I make a game in Unity, right, as an example, and I do actually a mail pilot game. It's almost like a top-down shooter. Same game in Unreal. If I can do the same game on the web, if I can do the same game in OpenGL, if I can do the same game, and I can keep going, Python with Pygame, and Android, Swift with Sprite Kit, same game, exactly the same game, same assets, same mechanics. If I can know how to do that, framework, because there's different API calls across different platforms, right? Now you might think this is kind of messed up, right? The calculator app, how difficult could it be? Requirements. So this is the app that I want you to build. It's got to look something like this, right? Like an actual calculator app, right? I want you to kind of format it for at least 320 by 480, all right? So please don't make it so that it's that small. So your web app should be something that fits on some kind of mobile screen. And there's a method for this, right? Because later on, to convert it to a real application across platforms, Android and iOS, right? So we're going to do that. So it has to be compatible with that. And we're going to have to make some changes to the application. It's not just a straight, kind of cross build, so to speak. There are some difficulties when you build this thing. By the way, I don't need you to do plus, minus, or percent at the beginning. You don't need to do that. The only thing I'm asking for is when you look at this thing, some kind of clear button, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, an equals button, plus, minus, multiply, and divide, right? Why? I want you to think about how to make this thing. If you're actually making the interface, it might take you, what, 10 minutes? With jQuery Mobile, if you want to figure it out, half an hour, maybe, at the most. If you figure it out, you can probably start today, and I recommend that. We should do that in class. At some point, start your app, right? And I'm going to give you some time to do that today. Remember that we're using some kind of framework that's going to be compatible with PhoneGap or Cordova. I'm going to talk about those today. So again, you can use Ionic, you can use jQuery Mobile. Could probably use, if you really wanted to, Bootstrap. If you really wanted to do a Bootstrap kind of app, if you really want to go that way, you could. There might be issues with just using plain Bootstrap, especially since there is no other pages. There's only one page, single page that's going to come up, right, initially. I don't want you to use any kind of evaluation library to evaluate what you type in, okay? So there's no evaluation. You can't just say, okay, give me that string, okay, evaluate. No. So that, you got to think about how this works, right? If I press the 1 button, and then I press the plus button, and then I press the 2 button, 1 plus 2, it's going to calculate, right? So there's a series of steps to get there. Now, going back to basic math and terminology, numbers are called the operands, right? That's what they're called. And the button that does something, adds, multiply, subtract, whatever, that's the operator button, right? Going back, simple math, right? So you need to be able to keep in memory 2 operands and our operation, some kind of operation that does it, right? link or kind of do chains of operations, like 1 + 2 + 3 - 4 divided by 3, you know, blah, blah, blah. It should keep track of all that stuff. It should work like a basic calculator. This is easy, but I'll tell you, students in the past have had real issues putting this thing together, especially from a functionality perspective. Yes.
So then, just follow like orders of operations stuff. Like
No,
exponents.
but so the question is, sorry for people online, do I have to follow order of operations and exponents? Calculators don't really do that. You're the order of operations in a calculator, right? You kind of specify how it divides and multiplies, right? So if I go 1 + 2 divided by 3, it's going to go 1 + 2, 3. Right? That's how it's going to work. Special calculators have brackets and all this other stuff. If you want to make a scientific calculator, really go on the limb, add extra functionality, and I put that down here. If you look at on the bottom, I said there's bonus opportunities, right? I just gave you some examples, like a splash screen, so 2 screens instead of 1. Move from one screen to the other with jQuery Mobile. How do you do that? How do you make a splash screen so it kind of fades in and fades out? There's ways of figuring that out. And then other additional math functions like square root and whatever. Now here's the rub, right? Because this is your first application, it's nice and simple. It's bonus. For every additional operation you put in, it's worth its weight, right? So if you just give me plus minus, that's not really an operation. That just changes from plus to minus. So not going to do much there. But if you do something like square root, do something like exponent, that kind of thing, because it has to work within the operation framework. How do you add, 1 exponent 3, like one of those kind of things? The exponent of 5 or whatever, and then create a calculation. It takes a little bit of work. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to use a regular calculator on the machine, not a hand calculator, like the one I'm showing here, which is a standard calculator that you might see in a Windows machine, right? This one. Use this as reference, right? So I want you to make sure that the way this functions, your calculator on your machine, is the way that your calculator is going to function, right? So some challenges. One is to the right, so it's right justified, right? How about if I start typing stuff and I fill up the whole, result text box, so whatever you're going to, what happens? Does it stop? Does it keep going? Does it micronize? Does it change to scientific notation? What happens, right? These are things you got to figure out. The logic behind this thing is really going to shine, right? That's where it's going to happen, right? The user interface, like I said, 10 minutes, half an hour, you're done. But the other stuff, the functionality, and for me not to be able to break your calculator, going to happen, that I want you to work on. Again, once you get this done, and the same logic that you build here can be applied to any other application framework because it's the same stuff, right? More or less. Again, this is due a couple weeks out. Today, we're going to have a little bit of time where you build your user interface. I'm almost going to force you kind of to work on jQuery Mobile or Ionic, whatever you feel like using. Version of Ionic, and we'll talk about what that is in a second, is Ionic 2. That's the latest version, V2, right? However, you could use the older version if you so choose. It's not that bad either. Mobile framework, and we'll talk about others. Ratchet is another one that's out there as well. That kind of gives you a look and feel, because remember, what we're going to do is take our technologies and convert them with PhoneGap or Cordova to a true app, a native application. From a sign-up perspective, we talked about signing up mostly last week, and we're going to talk about PhoneGap Build, right? Because there's something you can do with PhoneGap Build. I want you guys to sign up for PhoneGap Build. And I think I'm already signed up, so it's going to take me random, maybe not. So PhoneGap Build is a service, right? So let's say you don't have a Mac, at home, right? But you still want to build for iOS or Android, right? You can do so. You can get yourself Adobe PhoneGap to do it for you. PhoneGap Build allows you to do one private app and a bunch of public apps. Right, so that's one really good thing. We'll talk about this. This is one of the things I want you to do, because we're gonna use PhoneGap Build. Not today, but next week we're gonna talk about PhoneGap and how to convert technologies into native apps. Now this is, I'm warning you ahead of time, a grueling, difficult process for iOS because of all the certificates that we have to get. Luckily, we have Macs in front of us. We might be able to do something with them. Right? I'm just telling you. And so I can only show some of you how it works. Acceptable would be if we can at least get the Android side done, right? So remember that you can do Android builds as well as iOS builds, and we can test Android later. You know, one of the things I like to use a lot is if I go to Genymotion, we're going to talk about downloading and installing Genymotion, standalone Android emulator, and install. And I use this frequently, although I have to say that the emulator that's built into Android Studio these days is a lot better than it used to be. Just saying. But Genymotion makes it much easier. It's using a virtual machine, right? So it uses VirtualBox as a backend, which makes it a lot faster. Talk about Genymotion a little bit as well, right? Again, free stuff you can sign up for, and everything else. The assignment. Any questions around this? Any questions around what I'm asking you to build? Actually, if you look at the assignment details, it's quite simple, right? I would never give somebody a calculator to do on an exam. Okay, there just would not be enough time, right? Because of the trial and error and everything else. I could scale something like this down, you know, and get you to build something easier. This, again, you're like, calculator. Oh my God, Tom, this is like the easiest thing ever. I can do 1 + 1 and 2 + 2 and 3 × 5, you know, no problem. But we have to talk about that for a second, right? Here's the question for you. Should every button have to press the 1 button? It gives me a 1, you know, 2 button. That doesn't make any sense, right? You should be able to listen for any button press on the actual interface, right? And be able to use a shared event handler, right, to create that, you know, the effect. So that there's some back-end JavaScript we have to talk about today. That's why part of our class today is all around JavaScript and a little bit of TypeScript to kind of get you guys. Who's never done TypeScript with me, right? All done TypeScript, right? You've all done some kind of TypeScript before, yeah? Yeah, good. So if you've all done TypeScript or some of it, then we should all know a little bit about it, and that means just we're going to be a refresher. We're going to talk about some more higher-end functions like modularity, class functions, and so on. I also want to talk about ECMAScript 6 a little bit more and how that all ties in, because a lot of these frameworks are using ECMAScript 6 these days. I'm going to give you a bit of time at the end, you know, to do your app. Please don't run away from the user interface, because time runs away with you, and you only have a couple weeks to do this. And I know how things have gone, like give them touch, jQuery mobile, let's say for a week, right? So, and I don't want to give you guys too much homework, right? So I want to kind of make it so that's kind of our class is kind of encapsulated into one if we can. But I want to try and do that. Next week, I will check you. I want to check and see your progress. So just letting you know, there will be a bonus mark for you having, you know, kind of at least worked your way through it. And your user interface is balanced. So you'll have some time today, and you'll get a mark next week based on your user interface. I will check you. Check an exercise, but I will go around and say, is it done? Okay, good. Does it work? Do I get some kind of feedback from a console log for each of your buttons or whatever? Great, fantastic. You get a mark. So be prepared for that. I mean, I'm going to go around and check you guys. And I want to see what you come up with. Keep in mind when you build your application. 1, please don't make the buttons stupidly small. Right? Some people, I've seen people make buttons like really micronized, right? That's just dumb, right? Knowing if you can't touch it with your finger, that's not right. Think about human interface guidelines. What size at the minimum should your buttons be in pixels? 1 pixel. Yeah, that's really, that's great. I love your thinking. No, it should be something like between 60 and 80 pixels at minimum, right? And the reason for that is because, and I'm just talking pixels. I'm not talking about DPI or points or anything like that, like relative units. I'm talking about pixels. And I kind of give this example. Our fingers got to be able to touch it. If it doesn't work, if you can't touch the button, then it's not big enough, right? Okay, and right? I mean, you want to try and do a one-to-one comparison on your screen as much as possible. So make it so that if I do a 320 by 480 kind of app, that should be the size. Right? I should be able to go there and look at my finger, go, yeah, my finger probably touched this thing just from a, you know, from a testing perspective, right? If it's too small, or if you really have to, if it's too tight, you know, or if it looks too small and for you, it's probably too small. The extra space, this isn't 320 by 480, right? This is a little calculator, right? What about the extra space you're going to have? You're going to probably have space for extra buttons. You might have space for additional functionality. You might have a space for a much larger result area. extra space, right? Now, how does the calculator work anyway? Right? So if I bring up a typical calculator, just to give you some idea, so if I go, kind of calculator, gee, might look familiar, huh? Right? So here's the calculator on a Mac, right? And if I go in 1 plus, notice that the operation didn't come up, right? 2 plus, it calculates, times, right? 3 is equal to, right? You got to figure what that calculation is doing there, right? The calculator itself has, you can do different things here. It does temperature, volume, weights and masses, this stuff, right? The calculator is actually quite useful on the Mac, right? And also, what if I wanted to change this, from, again, I want to go into scientific, right? It does do a scientific view, right? So if you have a Mac, you have access to one, you can see that it has additional functionality. So this part is the calculator, but there's all these additional functions. So if I give you 2 marks for each of these functions, let's say, but you probably need the brackets, that's a lot of extra marks you can kind of accrue for this application, right? If you get everything perfect. Why am I doing that? Because I know that the next ones and the next ones and the next ones are all going to be much harder than this one, because of conversion, because of what I'm going to ask you to do. I want you to build probably a PhoneGap or Cordova application with some kind of framework in the future. I want you tying in some kind of data store. We're going to talk about that. There's lots of stuff we're going to do in the future, and I know this is going to be the easiest one, and I want to get you front-loaded with as many marks as possible. Things go wrong with this kind of stuff. It's hard to do. So this is neat. So it does that, and the other thing that it also does, if you want to, some of what I've asked you to put in here is, like, if you look down at some bonuses, is so extra, like a splash screen or some other math functions. The other one that I want you to think about is, how about different orientations? If you want to do an orientation change, maybe a button to do that, like go portrait, you want to do landscape, and it would change your button profile. How would you do that? How would you change it from 320 to 480 to 480 by 320 or whatever it would, right? And why would you want to emulate that? You could do it with a button press, like change the landscape, right, or whatever. We did with the scientific calculator, but actually adds functionality and forces it to go landscape in order for it to work, right? Those are extra functionalities, and if you have time and you want to challenge yourself, again, I'd be willing to reward you for your extra effort, right? Again, you can take this as far as you want, or you can do the basic app. Be a calculator that works and looks similar to what I've shown you. You can take it further, and the further you take it, the more marks you'll get. So it'll be one of those things, an assignment that scales, right? Which is, I know a lot of people like that kind of thing because it gives you an opportunity to explore the framework. And if you don't want to use jQuery Mobile and you want to learn Ionic or something like that, it gives you the opportunity for you to do that as well. Stretch yourself a little bit. And then what if someone really wanted to do this with iOS? If you were like, Tom, you know what? I really want to learn iOS in this course, but do you mind if I do it in iOS? I'd be like, okay, great. I think it's a great opportunity for you to learn iOS. What if you want to do it with Android? I'd be happy with that too. Whichever framework you wanted to use, because this is mobile and pervasive computing, I have access to Android and iOS, and I have access to all that stuff. I could test your app as long as you let me know which one it would be. I'm good with it. That you want to learn. A great exercise for yourself, if you ever get time to do it in the future, would be app and actually make it with iOS and Android. Do both and make it identical. Make it as close to possible. That's a great exercise, and the reason why is because Android and iOS handle things a lot differently, right? So it wouldn't look exactly the same. So again, I kind of do this app as my hello world. So this is, hey guys, hello world. Go ahead, do your hello world app. Okay. Questions around this at all? It's not really that again crazy. Please remember that it does require GitHub. Now it says Android project files. Any project files. Your project files, which be here, obviously I've used this for other projects. It should say your project files, right? So if it says Android, ignore that. I've used this app, like I said, it's my Hello World app, right? So that's why it says Android in this case. Okay, no further questions. Let's move on. I'm going to check Slack later on the Slack channel to see if people, I know there are some people that are remote today because of the weather. People are, kind of afraid of coming in. I know there's a few people that kind of send me messages saying, Tom, I'm not going to coming in. The roads up here, when I hear up here, it's somewhere, I don't know, Aurelia or someplace like that. I don't know. Someplace else that are just, you can't kind of go through the roads or whatever. I'm totally fine with that. Again, there's some people that couldn't make it. So I will be checking the Slack channel later on for any kind of questions if you're watching remotely. Okay, for now, what I want you to do is I want you to sign up for PhoneGap Build. Sign up for PhoneGap Build. So again, when you sign up, you're actually you're using an Adobe account, right? So Adobe accounts are actually free, even though you don't have an Adobe application. You can still sign in or sign up with an Adobe account, right? So here's my Adobe ID. Let's see if I can remember what the password is. I always forget. Yeah. When I sign in, I did kind of a demo app. Here's my PhoneGap demo that I kind of did. And what it allows you to do as an example, it gives you iOS, Android, Windows Phone, whatever you decide how you configure your application. And it actually uses a Git source for this app. So that's what PhoneGap Build looks like. It's actually a service. And if I was to actually look at the code, right, as an example, and again, I kind of used a build. I used some basic assets that I had lying around. But if you look at the build, I called it, PhoneGap Build. This is my iOS. I can grab the iOS application files as well as the Windows application files or the Android application files, the APK, and it supplies them for you up here, right? So that's one of the things that you can do with PhoneGap Build, right? From an account perspective, if I edit my account for a second, I just want to show you something. Notice that my signing keys, I have a signing key that I set up for iOS, and I did that with my Mac, right? So that's one of the things that I went through, and it was a couple things I had to do. So I'm going to show you my account. So this is if I go to my developer account that I'm using for this course, and again, this is my developer account, not the school's account. Well, you'll have similar access, and I want to try and set that up with you today. So give you guys access, send you guys invitations to the developer account. So here's mine, right? Now there's different ones, right? So I have access to me. That's me. I paid $99 a year for my on my account. You can also have under Georgian, we have a university account, a school account that I'm going to get you guys signed up with, right? And I need to send you invites for this, and we need to set up certificates and so on. Now, in order for you to set up a certificate, you need a Mac, right? So that means the machine in front of you that is a Mac, not your PC. PCs can't set up certificates with your PC for Apple, right? You can certainly set up. Here's the rub, and I got to say this, with all certainty. The certificate is machine specific, right? So that means the machine in front of you, if it's the school machine, is the machine you need to use to generate your keys and to do your build. You can't do it anywhere else. That's a negative, right, for me, right? But that's the way Apple works. Apple works very specifically to make sure that the person who's working on the machine is a per seat basis. You can't have, you can have more than one machine, obviously, but you have to have a certificate for each machine you're using. And they do a lot of there's the security side of things. You can't just create a pseudo machine for it to work. And one of the things that people have issues with is if they run something like a Hackintosh, right? They put a Hackintosh together, they slap it together, they use some kind of VM, and they download an illegal copy of, or even a legal copy of Mac OS, slap it in. It doesn't work properly, especially for signing certificates. You'll have problems with this, and this is where I always try to say people, I know you want to kind of set this up. Highly recommend against it. Use the Mac, right, for this. We have Macs in the room. Hopefully we can set up these signing certificates. I don't know if we have access, but we'll try. Worst case scenario, I'll show you how it's done, right? And then you can use the Android side as well. So that's your, we're going to do that today. We're going to send out, and so I'm going to take, on the break, I'm going to go around. There's no reason for me to record this. I'm going to go around and actually get all your information and sign you up with the Apple certificate program so we can perhaps do some of this stuff, I have to say. And I'm saying this in a very loose way only because I really don't know if we need a developer mode for you to go into your keychain and set up a certificate. I don't know, right? I'm guessing we do. So that's one. Genymotion also is a really cool little product. Again, you need to sign up or sign in for this thing. I wonder if I did this. Probably not. I always use my generic email for this. Just can't ever remember my password. There we go. All right. So again, I mean, I don't have a license for this. It's a free license that I'm using, right? As an example, you know, what you can do is you can download Genymotion. Again, it's available for Mac and Windows machines. And how does it look? So if I was going to launch it, so if I was actually going to, you know, kind of type in Genymotion, what does it do for us? It gives us my Android emulator. And we need to kind of do this too. If we're going to build apps for Android and iOS, we need some way of emulating everything. Notice there is a later version of this. But so how does this work? Here's an example of some VMs that I've built in the past, right? You can see that I've got different kinds of VMs, right? So here's a Google Galaxy Nexus. What would this be? Google Galaxy Nexus. You know, with a, you know, this interface, API 17, right? There's also a Nexus 5. So if I was going to launch it, I can just click on this and launch it. Okay, luckily I'm not virtualizing. What it's going to do is launch VirtualBox, and if everything works well, it'll bring up my virtual machine. Now, the good thing about this is it detects, yeah, I'll leave this alone for now. I'll update this later. Now, I want you to see how fast that came up. That was really fast for you know, for a simulator, right? Or I should call it emulator, which is what it is, a VM. This is pretty cool. So we've got an actual little Android box right here, right? And the great thing about this is it acts like an Android device, right? So you can test with, and it gives you an IP address. Actually, if you plug into it and you try and detect, you want to launch a VM in a device, it'll act like a device, right? As opposed to, especially with Cordova, if you're someone, we're going to get to Cordova later on, and if you want to target or build on an Android device, it'll do so. It'll do right on the VM, which is really cool. It'll actually, you know, it'll look real. It'll be a good test bed for that. So we need some kind of virtual machine. So please download and install Genymotion. We're going to get to that later on. I didn't want to do everything last week because there's a lot to install, but I would recommend this, especially if we're not using Android Studio. This is a nice step to kind of be able to go right from Cordova or PhoneGap right to some kind of emulator for Android, right? Because we need to test Android apps too. So kind of a cool little app that we can download. Again, it's not, it doesn't cost anything for you to figure it out, especially if you're not using it for professional you know, reasons. We're all good to go. Okay. So questions around Genymotion or anything like that. Now, again, if you're working with a Mac in front of you, chances are you won't be able to install anything. Okay. Just saying. By the way, just a show of hands. I know I've seen some people with Macs who does not have a Mac. I just want to see that again. So you guys don't. So again, so this is the stuff. This is the challenge we're going to have in this room. Most of you don't have Macs. You're going to be using. Thank you for that. You're going to be using the Mac in front of you. Might be able to give you your keychain access and might not. Right. So I'm going to pause the video right here. I want to go around before we continue, and I want to get you guys certificate access on the Apple side of the house so that you have a working certificate. You don't have to pay $99 a year. It doesn't make any sense, right? And you can develop apps. You can't put them on the App Store, but you'll be able to do all the steps up to and including getting certificates and setting up your deployment stuff, like right from you know, with PhoneGap Build and all this kind of stuff, right? Because we need to have those certificates in place in order for you to, you know, build up a you know, kind of a native app with web technologies. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video here, and when I'm going to go around now, I may call you up because it might be easier for us to do this because I'm going to send you an email. People that are not here today, we'd have to do it another day. So when you're back in next week, again, it's not urgent, but I want to set all this up ahead of time. So if you want to explore and experiment, you have latitude to do so. The challenge is it's going to have to be in this room, right? Or I'm going to have to set you up with certificates in other places, right? So I'll show you how that all works and how finicky it is in a bit. All right. So please, on the break, kind of if I'm working with somebody. And I'm not going to get you. I'm going to start over here on the left side of the room. I'm going to work over towards Matt on the other side there, right? So if by the time I get there, if you want to go and grab a coffee and come back, I think that might be good. Like, you know, I'll get to you. And if you even want to go now, it doesn't matter. I'm going to, you know, go grab a coffee now. It's nice and early if you don't have a coffee in your hand already. And then as I get to you, we'll get this done so I don't make it completely boring, right? If you really want to make best use of your time, start working on your user interface for assignment 1, right? That's the best use of your time, right? But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go around and make sure everyone has a certificate, okay? So I'm going to pause the video for this.